the most bizarre human world records. The Netherlands has farthest swim under ice. That definitely doesn't seem fun. England has fastest motorcycle driven blindfolded. That seems even worse of an idea, especially considering they were going 165 miles per hour. France, of course, has the most bizarre human diet. 18 bikes and a what? Wait, is this possibly the same French guy from history that ate a newborn baby? Turkey has tallest living woman, also longest nose, also tallest living man, which is fascinating because Turkey isn't particularly tall on average compared to other countries. Cyprus with longest time trapped in an elevator, 6 days. How does it take 6 days to get him out? Poland, of course, with the heaviest deadlift. Yeah, those Polish bodybuilders are insane. But Lithuania has the heaviest weight lifted with a beard. Wait, heaviest weight lifted with a beard? What? Deadliest sniper, of course, goes to Finland. We all know about that guy. I talk about him way too much on my channel. France has the record for 156 beers drank in one sitting, but England has most pubs visited by one person. I didn't even know 44,000 pubs existed in the world. Croatia with longest time breath held. How do you survive 37 minutes of holding your breath? Do you go into a coma after that? And then finally, Serbia with highest fall survived without a parachute. Oh yeah, this is that lady that fell out of the plane. It's interesting because I've actually heard of several of these stories before, but it's like the Olympics, like every country gets to take home a certain goals for one of these bizarre facts. The world, according to Frank Zappa. He once said you can't be a real country unless you have a beer and an airline. He also said it helps if you have some sort of football team or some nuclear weapons. I have no idea who this man is. Regardless, by that definition, let's see who's a real country or not. So if you have all four, a beer and airlines, a football team, and nuclear weapons, you are the only realist country out there. So that's the USA, India, and Russia, also the UK and France. How do we know he meant American football by this though? There's the countries in green with a beer and airlines and just nuclear bombs. That's only Pakistan, China, and North Korea. There's no football team though. In yellow, there's beer and airlines and a football team, but no nukes. That's mostly Latin America, most of Europe, and parts of Africa. Oh, all of Oceania. In light green, they just barely passed the cut to be a real country, according to Frank Zappa. So most of Africa, the remainders in Latin America, and the remainders in Europe. As for the rest of these places, they are not real, which I can agree with that. I can't even name some of these places in the Caribbean. However, there's a lot of places in the Islamic world that obviously do not have a beer. That obviously kind of goes against a lot of things. But yeah, also the microstates of Europe, they're not making the cut. Greenland's light blue, but they are under Denmark, so they still kind of follow it. I feel like this was almost a perfect definition until you get to this region of the world. Besides that, accurate. The top 10 coldest and hottest countries in the world, starting with the most extreme, Russia is the coldest and Burkina Faso is the hottest. Now 28 degrees Celsius doesn't seem that high, but this is on average. So in like fall and spring, it's definitely going to be around 82. However, in some of the hottest days of the year, it's going to be closer to 117. Look at the significant drop between Iceland and then going to Canada and Russia. On average, they're just colder by 5 degrees every day, which considering their location on a globe, that shouldn't be too surprising. They're both obviously pretty high up there. Keep in mind, this is also across the entire country, and some of these places are pretty big, while Canada and Russia are the biggest in the world together. Then there's these two places that just barely squeeze into the top 10, Switzerland and Benin. Kind of a funny theme here. The countries on the right are as close to the equator as you can get. Meanwhile, the countries on the left, they're the opposite, as far away from the equator. Belief in life after death around the world. Of course, the country with the most atheist population is China, so their numbers coming in low isn't surprising at all. I'm actually shocked that even 11% believe in life after death in China. I thought it'd be closer to 5. There is a difference though between irreligious and believers of a life after death. Japan and South Korea, for example, have about 1/3 of their population that believe there's going to be something that happens in the afterlife. Or I guess I could simplify that as just there is an afterlife. I don't know why I thought Russia would be a bit higher. They're very orthodox there, aren't they? This is following the trend with the rest of the Nordic countries. Except for Iceland, they are strangely extremely high compared to the rest of the region. I mean, they're beating out the UK, France, Italy. Canada also close to Iceland at 56%, but they're not beating out the US at almost 70% of our population. One of the only countries that beats us is Mexico at 70.8. All of Latin America, though, as a whole, has a lot higher numbers. Well, until you get to Africa, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Kenya, all over 80%. Remember that Nigeria has very high population numbers, too. Indonesia as well at 73%, still not beating the Philippines, though. But here's when things get insane when looking at the Islamic world. 95% in Libya, 91% in Iran, but the highest by far, Bangladesh at 98.8. And remember that Bangladesh has more population than all of Russia up here. I wish there was a bit more data. Would love to have seen like places like India and Saudi Arabia. These three regions of the world put together make 50% of the Earth's GDP. That is an insane figure. So you have just the east coast of the United States is where the vast majority of Americans live too, and including New York, Chicago, Florida, Texas. You've got all of Germany, northern Italy, the lowlands, a lot of France, all of England, and the coast of Spain. Then finally Japan, excluding the northern parts, South Korea, and then the coast of China. In terms of area alone, it looks like this is maybe maybe 1/16 of the Earth's surface, or somewhere around that number. Kentucky and here, you're welcome for our contribution. It's all KFC. Someone needed to show me this map like 5 years ago. The Rust Belt states versus coal mining and industrial. I've been kind of using Rust Belts and the Midwest interchangeably. I guess that's clearly not the case. Maybe a better phrase to use would be the Frost Belt, although that kind of includes all of New England. Although there's no concise definition about this. Sometimes Iowa's included, sometimes Kentucky. You could probably throw Missouri in there just because of St. Louis. Didn't realize New Jersey is also part of the Rust Belt. Not even that long ago, this used to be the heart of the American economy. The size of the Roman Empire compared to the United States. We have Roman Africa, or modern-day Morocco, sitting right over Los Angeles, the Iberian Peninsula being NorCal and Oregon. The Gallic region is Idaho, and like all of Wyoming. Technically, the Roman Empire at their height would be going over into Canada. And we have Turkey, which mostly sits in the Rust Belt. The New England region would be fighting the Persians. Those are the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea. Of course, Egypt and Florida. I'm actually surprised. Florida seems like the place that would have random triangles somewhere in their desert. Florida doesn't have a desert. Somewhere in their swamps. But yes, size-wise, these are comparable. If only the Great Lakes were as giant as, well, the Mediterranean Sea. A true map of the United States of America. Because no, it's not just the lower 48 states. But no, it's also not just the 50 states, including Hawaii and Alaska. Probably by far the most popular overseas territory is Puerto Rico. But even that is not enough. There's also the U.S. Virgin Islands, Navassa Island, Bajo Nuevo Bank, which I don't even think I was aware of that. Then we have all this territory out here in the Pacific. Again, another popular one, American Samoa, but also Kingsman Reef, this atoll, Jarvis Island. Jarvis, tell me information about your island. There's Baker Island and Howland Island, also the Northern Marianan Islands. Guam, which is a big one. I remember not that long ago, North Korea was threatening to nuke Guam. Or at least that's what they were telling us. Midway Atoll, Wake Island. A lot of these are very popular during the Pacific theater of World War II. These areas were obviously playing very critical roles during our war with Japan. Overseas territory from France and the UK are also often forgot about. The year slavery was abolished in every country in America. You might be surprised to find out how late we were here in the US, 1865, when the Civil War officially ended. Mexico abolished that 36 years before us. Meanwhile, these Central American countries abolished it 5 years before Mexico. Bolivia was one of the first in America, only 2 years after those Central American countries. However, the first by far, 1793 out of Haiti. And Haiti's had a very fascinating history. The only places that abolished it after the US is Cuba, Puerto Rico, and then Brazil in 1888. What's interesting about this map is a lot of these places weren't necessarily independent from their European overlords. That was definitely a factor in all this. This map also helps explain why so many Confederate sympathizers moved down to Brazil after the Civil War. There was still a 20-year gap before Brazil would follow suit. The decline of the French language in former French colonies. So this is all of the modern-day territory in Africa that France colonized. The vast majority of these places got their independence after World War II, so not that long ago. However, in these stripes, these are countries where French is no longer an official language. I'm sure there are still speakers here, though. In Algeria, for example, there's 44 million people that live there, and 15 million speak French. It's actually third in the world with the most French speakers. There's Burkina Faso, which just recently dropped French as an official language. And then there's all these red stripes where French remains the official language. And I think what's most fascinating about this map is all these countries are closest to France. You'd think they would maybe not drop it as fast, but no, it turns out the places that are furthest away from France haven't dropped it as the official language. Remember that the official language of a country doesn't necessarily reflect what's actually going on there and which languages are actually being spoken from day to day. I mean, for example, famously, the US does not even have an official language. Yet I think we're at like 95% English proficiency. Big thanks to my patrons. You can find a link in the description down below to support me. The beautiful Megan Underwood. Drum your dad, back with the milk. Look outside. I cannot sleep without Drew's voice. Amateur archaeology. Carmel Saida. InquisitorXarius. JohnDenver. LuxembourgLover. Sebby, if you hear this, I love you. The Great Mexican 760. And ZaneyBoi.